Is Mr. Hanif Benjamin, and he's going to talk to us today about the effects of psychological trauma.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yeah, I think it's good evening, right? It's good evening, yeah. We have throughout the day been dealing with a lot of, topics as it relates to mental health and the effects on our children, our families, and our society. And I was very pleased to know this morning when the minister spoke about, the importance of mental health and its correlation to community, to family, and its ultimate response to how we treat with this mental health. So today I'm going to take you through the effects of psychological trauma on neuropsychological development and the role of the trauma system therapy in its treatment. So I'm going to get right into it. When trauma occurs at any childhood or adolescent stages and remains untreated, it inhibits neurobiological functioning. And how it is I'm going to take you through this very briefly is through an experiment. This morning we heard a lot about rats, our most favorite experiment, So what rat play tell us about traumatized children and adolescents? As professionals concerned about mental health, children, we know the importance of play, and in particular, when play stops or go wrong. Some of the first treatment in the field of child mental health involves play. Why do humans and non-human children play? So Pansket, in his book Effective Neuroscience, reports on his study of young rats at play, and what was discovered was phenomenal. He observed these animals are playing for several days. And in this 10-day experiment, he observed in the first 4 days the excitement of play. How many of us have young children here? Just quickly show your hand, or grandchildren. So you understand the importance of play. And if one morning you wake up and your child is not playing, you immediately think that something is wrong. And chances are, correct. So I want to introduce you to the stimulus. And in this case, the stimulus was a hair from a cat. One single grain of cat hair was introduced to the family of this rat. Now I must tell you that this family of rat have never seen a cat before. They have never interacted with a cat. Nobody gave them the memo about cats because they are lab rats. Yeah? Follow with me if you would. So for the first 4 days, we observe play to be, oh yeah, I need you all for this one here, right? We observe play to be? So this is where the children are rumbling and tumbling and great excitement is going on in the home. You're tired, you're not sleeping, you have to take turns, you're sleeping in the bathroom because you're just tired because of the play, yeah? But when the stimulus was introduced to this family, what happened? Not only did it decrease, it went to none, to zero. There was zero play. But it didn't stop there. What was even more profound, ladies and gentlemen, is that single cat hair was removed after 24 hours. And the observation continued for a further 5 days. Play never regained any form of what it was before. Never. Even though the stimulus or the trauma was removed. What happened when the signal of danger is introduced, even briefly, into our social environment? It changes everything. Life is never the same again. This signal of danger for those unfortunate lab rats is a single hair from a cat. So I want you, ladies and gentlemen, to think about the traumatized children with whom you work. I want you to understand, and coming from this experiment, that once trauma has been introduced to the social environment of a child, an adolescent, or a family, it immediately and pervasively changes, alters the lives of this child, adolescent, and family forever. As part of the experiment illustrates, if there's a real threat in the child's social environment, it makes no sense to address anything else. So what this is saying to us is that this trauma, untreated, affects the neuropsychological development, which affects functioning in later life. It means then that if we are not on point with our trauma treatment in the early stages, then our lives will be altered forever. As I often say to people, we cannot stop trauma. We cannot unrape. We cannot unmolest. We cannot grow a limb from a vehicular accident. But what becomes critical, therefore, is the speed and the intensity at which we get to the traumatized. Everybody following me? Yes. I know we are a little tired, but follow with me, because I want to look at trauma, future, past, and the future. One of the most devastating effects of traumatic stress is its effect on children's ability to think into the future. Now, if consciousness is about the present and memory is about the past, then planning and anticipating are about our future. So this ability to see into the future is one of the most powerful functions on the human brain. At basic level, this ability maximizes survival through the ability to calculate survival-related risk, given the ever-changing environmental variables that are encountered in everyday life. So then I want to introduce you to the parts of the brain that perform these calculations. And we know that to be called parietal cortex. Now, this performs calculation of the likely risk and reward involved in future events. I don't need to go into this because earlier speakers spoke at length about this. But what I want to say to you though, is that in children with traumatic stress, these calculations are extremely important. An overestimation of the likely risk an event leads to the serious problem of avoidance of people, places, and things that might remind a child of trauma. So what this is saying to us is, if I am not able to see the future because I am traumatized, then how can I live effectively? How can I live engaged? So it takes me to our classrooms, to our families. When we talk about the bad child, or we speak about the hardened child, or we speak about the disrespectful child, or when we look at our Facebook and our news and we see the way our children are behaving, and we all become surprised. And here it is, understanding the system is saying to us that if it is my ability to see into the future, to navigate mentally, cognitively, has been interrupted by trauma, then are you expecting too much from me? Because this is about the social environment. And therefore I want to introduce you to the trauma system therapy. Having a balanced treatment through TST is inexplicably linked to recovery and better functioning. I'll take you through very briefly. TST is about understanding how the child's developing nervous system and the social environment interacts. This is reflected in our description of the trauma system, which is defined as a traumatized child who has difficulty regulating emotional states and the social environment and or system of care that cannot sufficiently help contain this dysregulation. So we have a child who has serious emotional dysregulation, and then you have a system, and when I say system, I'm referring to school, church, doctors, lawyers, criminal justice system, the mental health institutions, a system of care that seemingly is unable to help this child regulate. So therefore the quality of earliest interpersonal relationship sculpts the brain survival circuits to make the child more or less able to regulate emotion when faced with a stress. We call these strong attachment relationship signal of care. So I want to then introduce you to the Center for Human Development and our approach. TST is a comprehensive model for treating traumatic stress in children and adolescents that adds to individually based approaches by specifically addressing the child's social environment and or the system of care. We cannot treat a child in isolation who has been traumatized. There is no way it will work. If it is, that cat here that I introduced you to remains in the home and the child comes to your office for individual therapy and goes back to the home, what exactly have we done? If it is, the cat here is in the form of a teacher or in the form of a student in a school that has not been removed, and the child is going there every day to perform and seemingly cannot so do, what have we done? TST is about understanding the link between the system of care and the individual. This phase-based treatment recommends various treatment modules depending on the child's degree of emotional behavior regulation and the environmental stability. Recommended treatment modules for the most acute problem include models that focus specifically on aspects of the social environment that are believed to be impacting the child's symptomatology. Therefore, we are saying that we need to be very focused on what is causing the child's dysregulation. Where is the nexus of this dysregulation? Who, what, when, why? It is not just about the behaviors that has been exhibited. And for a long time we have concentrated on the behaviors of the child as opposed to where the behaviors derived from. Because in this model, if we are able to eliminate the nexus, if we are able to find where did this started, when did this started, and with whom, only then the behaviors will start to dissipate. Everybody following me?
Yes.
That yes sound like, oh God, yes, all right, yes. We're almost through. Children move from one treatment phase to the next based on, in fact, improvement in the stability of the social environment and or emotional regulation. As children transition to the more stable environment and demonstrate better emotional regulation skills, the focus of the intervention plan shifts and may include more office-based work to help the child develop coping skills or cognitively process the trauma. So what this is saying, and we have all been saying the same thing all day, where is our community mental health treatment? That is what we have been saying all day. And for years and years and years, we all know that the treatment cannot be confined to our offices. Because if it is confined to our offices, then our children goes back to a very dysregulated social environment. We are really not doing anything for our child. So we have been saying the same thing all day. Only when the child is stable enough in an environment, then we could bring the child in and begin that individual level of work. Because the child cannot see the future. The child cannot understand or comprehend tomorrow if every night I'm going home to be raped. The child cannot see tomorrow if every Monday morning I go to school, I am being bullied. And that is not being addressed. So therefore, the social environment becomes critical in mental health, especially in trauma. Because the thing about trauma is if it continues, if that cat here continues to linger, then I would not be able to identify the signal of danger. I will only be in one corner, so I'm going to try to avoid people, places, and things that reminds me. So I'm going to go to school, and I'm going to be hiding in the bathroom all day. I'll go to school, and I will get into an argument with the teacher to be put out of the class because the student that is sitting next to me bullying me. You understand what's going on here? Throughout the various phases, the specific focus on treatment is oriented around priority problems. You know it, a family comes to your office and they say, fix me. And they give you a list. Long. And they say, fix it. And we know mental health is very expensive. So chances are, if it's not being paid for by the state, by the third visit, or literally you have to beg for a third visit. And after that, you're putting it in the pile to reach out to. Because you know what happens. So in this model, we have identified, or we will identify, priority problems. A treatment plan to address a priority problem is formulated via the clinical indicated treatment modules. The individual who are responsible for carrying out the plan identify as well. Example, child, parent, outpatient clinic, home-based therapist, advocacy, all of these things. All of these things we have been saying today. When all priority problems have been solved, treatment focuses on placing the trauma in a positive context as the child and family look towards the future. You see, ladies and gentlemen, as I indicated to you, and you know the presentation on depression speaks to this. Why are we so depressed? More than likely it's because we are holding on to things of the past that are keeping us there, and we call that a prison. So we don't really live, you know, we exist. We exist every day, we get up, we go to work as best as we can, we go through doing the bare minimum, because the trauma has not been put in its positive context. So activities during the phase are identified to help create lasting meaning about a traumatic event. TFC, this is the last two slides, is designed to be used by any traumatized child, irrespective of age, who is having difficulty regulating emotional phases. Existing interventions do not offer clear approaches informed by theory about the way the social environment and the developing child interact. In Trinidad and Tobago, this is further compounded by challenges to the institutional framework, including school and the community and the family. Those of you know, pressure to get to a teacher, the pressure to get the mother or the guardian to come into the school to address a situation. So chances are a child will go through an entire school year without seeing the mother. Additionally, our mislabeling of youth as criminals, antisocial, etc., give a cultural nuance to intervention that can be perceived as adversarial. That is how our children see it. You against us, they against them. It's never about helping them move forward by understanding their perspective. So the Center for Human Development's approach is multifaceted approach, not only attending to the needs of the children and adolescents, but examines the critical system of care, including institutions, families, and other key stakeholders. Thus, within our work with the primary client being the child, the system of care we were also attended to. We emphasize and work directly in the client's social environment, helping to develop the self-regulatory capacities where survival in the moment occurs. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you, and I want you to understand that when we look at trauma in our children and adolescents, we must understand that it cannot be treated in isolation. It must be treated in a multi-level, multifaceted approach using all of the social environment. Again, thank you very much.